But I also have to say that we have failed you. We have made promises to you that we have not kept. And we absolutely have to send someone to Washington who understands that it is so very important that we keep the promises that we have made to the men and women who have fought for the very freedoms that we enjoy. And it absolutely is a top priority. And the answer to your question, by the way, is yes. But I just want to say again to you, thank you so much. And we need to make sure that we elect congressmen and women who are willing to fight for our veterans. And where there's not funding, I promise you, there really is funding. It's a matter of political will to find, again, root out the waste and inefficiency in our government and make sure that we prioritize every tax dollar that is spent.
I'd like to clarify that, sometimes we're constantly responding to why things have gotten so bad. And I think part of the thing we need to look at, especially when it comes to this situation, long term, is how did we get here? And I think you hear this term disconnect in Congress a lot, or we're disconnected from the people. And I'll tell you, when it comes to our military benefits and how our military is treated abroad, or how their rules of engagement are changed, today we have less than 25% of our leaders that have served in the military. And I think it's crucial that we put people in Washington, D.C. that have wore the uniform, that understand the sacrifice, understand the commitment, because there's a conviction there that won't let down. There's a tenacity there that can't be broken. And I think that's why I'm better positioned to take on that role, and I assure you, it is one of the top priorities to get out there and defend and take care of our veterans in this district and abroad.
Ms. Roby, we'll go with you first on the next question. Do you support H.R. 3590, otherwise known as the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and generally known as the Health Care Bill? Why or why not? And what can the next Congress do to prevent this bill from taking effect without a veto-proof majority?
Sure. I'm happy to answer your question. I do want to circle back real quick to the last answer and just say that I invite you to go to my website. We most recently formed a Veterans Advisory Committee. And on this committee are individuals from all over this district who are there to make sure that we are well informed about issues that affect our veterans. Healthcare. I said before, and I'm going to say it again, what's going on in Washington has absolutely nothing to do with health care reform and everything to do with government takeover of our lives. And if it really were about health care, we would see some real commonsensical reforms contained in that bill. Like, you and I ought to be able to purchase our health care across state lines, much like we do our life insurance. You ought not to lose your health care if you lose your job. It should be portable. People with pre-existing conditions ought to be able to form high-risk pools where they can qualify for the health care that best suits their needs. All of these, tort reform, medical liability reform, we don't see that in this bill. None of those things are currently included in that health care bill. All of those would drive down the cost of health care throughout our country. This health care bill is absolutely disastrous. And I have signed a pledge to repeal it. And the response to that is, well, how can you repeal it? We're going to have President Obama in office till 2012. Well, guess what? If we get this majority back, we don't have to fund it. And that is absolutely the most important thing. What's going on in Washington, my friends, is absolutely an issue of numbers. If we don't take back this House and restore conservative leadership back to our country, we are going to see more and more of this job-killing legislation shoved down our throats when we don't want it. So the answer is no, I do not support the health care bill. Yes, I would vote to repeal it, and yes, I would support real common sense principles that would drive down and put the private sector in charge of the cost of health care and not the government.
Never before has the United States citizens been told or been forced to buy something they may or may not want. It's unconstitutional, It needs to be fought, and it will be fought, and I think it will be fought equally by me and Ms. Rowe. We have both signed the Repeal It pledge, but more than that, you know, whenever Bobby Bright voted against it, another clear example of his lack of leadership was him coming back and then defending it, saying, well, we don't need to repeal it yet. You know, there's some good things in this bill. I'd be much more inclined to, let's take out the bad stuff and leave the good stuff. Well, I'll tell you something. Any unconstitutional bill is 100% bad and needs to go. But he also said that he was so disappointed that it passed on partisan lines, and he really wished it could have been a bipartisan bill. Well, you know, I'm one to offer solutions to Bobby Bright and give him a chance again to be a hero. So we contacted his office and told him we were going to be up there because, you know, he had 2 Republican candidates that also were against the bill, and since he had voted against the bill as well, we wanted him to join our bipartisan effort to repeal it. And shockingly enough, Bobby Bright didn't show up. But I tell you that story because it's important to know that it's one thing to be against something. It's another thing to actively work against it. As part of the Tea Party, I was on the front lines, fighting day in and day out, spending my money, opening my place of business up to combat the health care bill. I went to the 9/12 March on D.C. I helped put together the town hall meetings where Bobby Bright didn't want to have them. I have been acting on behalf of the people, with the people, for the people, to help stop this health care bill. And I will continue to do that moving forward. And it's important because that's a big separation of difference, I think, between me and my counterpart, because she was campaigning at the time. And much like when you talk about lip service and actual action, what has actually been done? And we need people that are going to be taking these people to task, whether it be Bobby Bright, whether it be Nancy Pelosi, or anybody else. And it's very important that we identify who's been doing that and get those people elected.